Welcome back to Go Outside and Cook. I'm Maury. I'm camped out here by the Kern River at the Kern River Park near Lake Ming, not too far from where I live. So I thought while I was out here I would do a follow-up video to my cast iron seasoning video, as well as cover some other things that have been asked of me over the last year as a result of that video. So when that video came out, it really kind of took off, and it's funny. A little bit of controversy behind it because it's not a traditional way of seasoning cast iron that most people are used to, and there were a lot of people that it solved some problems for who've been trying to understand it and also trying to get a good seasoning on their cookware. They've been kind of struggling with it, and so I went into a lot of detail in describing why we season, what the actual purpose of it is, try to clarify some of that, and then show the way that I do it, which is a very hot and fast method to get your your initial layers laid down, and then of course you season moving forward as you cook, and it just gets better and better. So I was asked a few things, and then the first thing I want to address, because I just get this out of the way, there's also been some ugly comments from people that already know everything, and they think there's only one way to skin a cat, and so I ran into a lot of that. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. And every now and then somebody comes along and sees that video, and they'll, first of all, you can tell they've skipped through it, which I don't mind. I can be pretty long-winded. Some people need a really detailed, explained reason for what they're doing. They want to understand why they're doing it and how it works, not just what to do. So skipping's fine. In fact, I'm going to encourage those people, because moving forward, if somebody makes one of those comments, I'm going to direct them straight to this video, and I'm going to show them what the results are, because I'm going to cook breakfast out here. So we'll go ahead and get past that. So let's start with what I'm working with. I've got two number 8 Griswold antique cast iron skillets here. When I bought these, I stripped them completely and I seasoned them my way, and I've been cooking on them since then, now I guess for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and they've just gotten better and better. So that's what we're working with today. I'll tell you this about the Griswolds: they're notorious, or I shouldn't say notorious. It's not a good word. The Griswolds are known for having a very slick, smooth surface. So when they cast their iron, they would machine the surface, the cooking surface, to being really smooth, with the idea that that was going to make it more slick and less sticky. And that is true, sort of. Let me explain. Iron's a very porous metal, and it has a lot of pitting in it. And so when these things are cast, they come out with a stippled finish. We see that on cast iron. And your lower quality cast iron has more of a rough, rigid stipple finish to it, where your better ones have kind of a medium stipple. Okay. By taking that stipple out of the cooking surface on these, it actually made it harder for seasoning to stick, because that profile is what the seasoning can grab onto and hold onto and not come off easily. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. I don't think it was a successful way to go. In fact, I've seen people take modern cast iron and smooth it out. It's not something I personally recommend. I would say go with especially if you're going to buy a new iron. Lodge, they don't endorse me, they don't pay me for this, but for my personal preference, I like Lodge. It's got just the right pre-seasoning on it. It's got just the right stipple finish, so that when I add my seasoning, it grabs on, and I'm allowed to put those 10 to 20 layers that I want to get on there to build the seasoning up past that rigidness to get me a smooth surface that way. So let your seasoning be what smooths your surface out. So having said that, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you what I do to get these things ready to cook in, because another thing that people really struggle with, they may do everything right seasoning, but they're not cooking in it right. You can't cook in cast iron the same way you do conventional cookware. It'll get way too hot, and when it gets too hot, it's going to be sticky. I don't care how good your seasoning is, it'll get too sticky. So you got to preheat it, you got to regulate it and get it where it needs to be before you start bringing the food in. So that's what we're going to do. I'll go ahead and flip these over, and we'll get some fire started. So I'm on a really low flame, and we're going to let these things go ahead and start to heat up. So I'm going to slowly warm these skillets up, and then I'm going to introduce the fat into them, and then we're going to let the fat get warmed up. Okay, so we're still getting the heat up on these things. You know, I'll feel some warmth up in these handles here, and then I'll adjust my fire to regulate the heat. These things will quickly start to resonate heat throughout the metal, and so they can get hot and out of hand on you real quick, and that's really probably the #1 mistake for people who are learning to cook on cast iron is it feels right, they get to work on it, and the next thing you know, it just keeps pushing forward and getting hotter and hotter, and things start to stick. I haven't put any fat or anything in these things yet. There's a real light coating of what was left the last time I cooked when I wiped it out. So I'm kind of letting that get hot, and some of that will actually cure on there and, you know, become seasoning. And we'll go ahead and these handles feel good and warm. Yeah. We'll go ahead and put some fat in there. See, I'm a little uneven out here, but that's all right. I can make some adjustments to this to level it out. Better. All right. Okay, so in this skillet we're going to put some potatoes in there. These are Yukon Gold, so they're very sugary, notorious for sticking. So I chose these potatoes for that reason. We're going to spread them out good and even, so they're all getting contact with the cooking surface. And you can see it's not super hot, so we're not searing these things right off the bat. That's on purpose, because again, this is going to continue to get hotter as we go if I do no other adjusting. As these potatoes start to absorb the heat is this iron is going to get hotter and hotter, and I don't want it to get too hot. So we're going to start right here. We're going to let it ride. Once it kind of settles and regulates, if I need to add a little heat, I can do that at that point, or I can remove some if I need to. But we don't want to be in any hurry. I'm getting these things in, you know, it's a cool morning out here, so that's kind of siphoning some heat off of the iron as well. But impatience is what's going to bite you in the rear end when you're cooking on this stuff. And we're just going to let this one hang for a little bit, and then we'll put some sausage in there, which sausage and bacon, especially bacon, is really sticky because it's got sugar. When it's cured with sugar and salt, and sugar sticks to everything. So while this sits here in warming mode, it's regulating. And this, because the potatoes went in, had a drop in heat, but it's going to come back, and I'm not going to push it back. It's going to come back on its own, and that's going to keep it from being a sticky cook. All right, so we're going to throw some sausages in there. We got some links, which are pretty much never sticky, but we also have these little patties, which typically are. All right. See the potatoes coming along. We're going to move them around so they get kind of a coating of that oil that helps the heat. Distribute evenly over the potatoes to help soften them up. Okay, so the heat in this pan is pretty well regulated at this point, and I'm going to go ahead and add a little more to it. Just going to bring it up a hair. So we let it get regulated so that it was going to reach its top temperature and run at that, and then from that point I decide how much more heat I need, and I bring it up slowly to get to the point I want to get it. Once it gets ahead of you, it's a little harder to pull back. Alright, potatoes starting to soften up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and put some seasoning in there. Seasoning is also something that likes to get sticky. And then we'll move these around again. Looking good. Okay, so these potatoes are pretty close to where I want them to be, but it's not time to eat yet. We're not done, so I'm going to push these over to one side, and I'm going to bring the heat down so that it's keeping the skillet warm, and this is going to become our holding skillet. We're going to hold this food here, keep it warm. We'll keep moving it around, keep it evenly warm. And the potatoes will soften a little more. They're about there. Okay, so what's left now is cleanup and storage, and depending on how long it's going to be before you use your iron again, that's going to dictate what you need to do to clean it up and store it. So these skillets here get used quite often, you know, daily. Every 1 to 2 days these things are over the fire, whether it's at my house or whether it's out in the backyard or out here camping. And so because I use them often, I'm just going to take a paper towel. I'm going to wipe the oil out. You can use a rag. I know some people will say, oh my God, it's going to taste like paper towel. Well, it doesn't. But get all that excess oil out of there, and I will even take it and wipe some on the outside for protection. So just like that, and then I'll get another one and I'll wipe it even thinner. And that goes in the oven and I store it that way. Now, having said that, if you're going to store your iron for long term, and when I say long term, I mean more than a week and a half, I would recommend that you actually wash this and get all the loose oil out of it, or you can heat it up and you can cure that oil on quickly using my seasoning method so that it turns into a matte black. And the reason you want to do that is because when this oil sits like that for days and weeks, it slowly starts to cure and it becomes very sticky and very rancid and nasty. And once you get that in your skillet, you're going to be pretty much stuck with having to restrip it and start all over again. You can't really break it down with soap or anything. So you want to have a dry skillet, well-seasoned dry skillet if you're going to do long-term storage. And if you do a longer-term storage, you still want to make sure you go check on it every now and then, because it just takes one little piece of that iron to poke up above the seasoning to be the starting point for corrosion. It'll start at that point, it'll corrode up underneath your seasoning and completely destroy your pan. But you don't want to store your stuff wet with oil for any period of time. Otherwise, this is acceptable. And then as you heat it up next time, you're actually curing on more seasoning. That's how you build your seasoning as you cook. Okay, so I'll get these cleaned up and I'll get them put away. And I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to today. If you have any questions, you know where to put them. I'll put a link to the seasoning video, the Mother of All Skillets video that kind of started this whole thing. I'm sure I didn't cover everything I intended to. I'll figure out what that is when I'm in the editing mode. I'll go, oh well, I forgot something, but that's okay. This video. So thanks for checking in with me. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, and we'll see you next time.